Hey, Darby and Average Status. Fancy meeting you here.
Yeah.
We're just playing some Fable Heroes, right? Wait, what's the game? Fable
Yeah, I'm
Legends?
having I'm having such a fun time playing Fable Hero Legends.
Yes, this game is amazing, dude.
Such a
Before
great
we talk about Fable Hero Legends,
Yeah.
I just really want you guys to know that Raid Shadow Legends is a great game you can play on
Guys,
mobile.
check out Raid Shadow Legend. You want characters? We got them.
It's Fable Heroes, anyways. I wonder what it would be like if, we just decided to do a podcast full time and stop editing.
You mean the Now We Gaming podcast? The once a month podcast we produce for YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, and SoundCloud. The one featuring guests and unique content every month.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, no, that sounds interesting, but I mean more like something like the CHRILLCAST.
That'd be fun.
This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I'm Beers and Bacon.
And it's Manic Monday.
Why don't you introduce yourself, Beers and Bacon?
All right. So I am the editor for DotSlashTech, the kind of hardware review channel, part of DotSlashFrag.
Nice.
It'll be starting up soon.
We've talked about DotSlashFrag before. They're a bunch of little gamer boys.
Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah, you can say that.
Mediocre at best.
So how convenient that you're the editor of the hardware division, and we're here to talk about the state of PC hardware. Let's just jump right into it, dude. NVIDIA launched the 3000 series. How are we feeling about it?
Yeah, so led up with the announcement in August, which was really exciting, seeing some really strong benchmarks versus, year over last generation, the 2000 series. One thing you see a lot with NVIDIA is when they release their entirely new architecture, the second year is always the year to upgrade. Like, 2000 series was the first of the RTX series. And now we have Ampere, which is the 3000 series, which is miles better than the 2000 was over the 1000 series. But so lots of good benchmarks came out. The cards released just last month in September. 17th saw the RTX 3080 release, and I think it was the 23rd we saw the RTX 3090 release. All the reviews were actually really good. They kind of matched up with NVIDIA's initial benchmarks, which, I always say take first-party benchmarks with a grain of salt because they might just be, cherry picking whatever performs best for them. So it's nice to see that. So it was exciting, but I guess the most exciting part was how much of a failed launch it was because stocks were just so incredibly low. I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah.
Stocks in terms of like pre-ordering them and actually getting your hands on them?
Yeah, there was no pre-orders to begin with. 3080s went live at 9 a.m. Eastern time where I am, and on NVIDIA's site. So, of course, I got the site loaded up, couple browsers ready to go, refresh action, part of that F5 crew, sitting there refreshing. 9 a.m. rings around, hit refresh. 9:01 rings around, out of stock, never even showed like the add to cart button. I think around like 9:30 or something that me and my buddy each got up like add to cart button, but we both got stuck trying to check out. So yeah, it wasn't a great launch. NVIDIA came out, saying
even with that, are you excited for this new series? Is it something that you're going to instantly, if you get your chance, are you instantly going to get one and upgrade like tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I've had some like downstock.net up, which will fire an alarm when one's available. I'm also using distill.io, which is a Chrome extension that refreshes pages and looks for changes. I've tried many times. It seems like every time I go to step out while I'm in my office to get a drink or something, it goes in stock, and then by the time I get back, it's gone. So yeah, I definitely want to get one. Benchmarks are really strong. It's showing 3080 over the previous generation 2080. Depending on what game you're playing, from as little as a 10 to 15% performance increase all the way up to a 40% or more performance increase. So it's really nice. I'd say the performance increase is worth it over like a 2080 if that's what you have to upgrade and you want that extra performance. And I would say even over the 2080 Ti, if you want to be on that bleeding edge and have the newest of the new, where it comes into its real strength is in RTX. The tensor cores are much better this time around. More of them, they're faster. So your RTX performance, so let's say, you're gaming at 1440p, playing some Metro Exodus or something, you'd have a much larger drop putting on RTX and DLSS on the 20 series versus the 80 series. You're not losing that huge performance loss just by wanting some ray tracing. Yeah. And DLSS 2.0 is out with the new cards, which greatly improves performance when running that dynamic scaling.
Yeah, I know you have a 20 series in your PC. Is there something that you're looking for in the 30 series or the 3000? Like, is there something there that will be like a dramatic increase for your PC overall?
Yeah, so I'm running the 2080 Ti right now with an Intel 10850K. Mm-hmm. And I've run some games with RTX on, like Battlefield 5. And to me, I like gaming at a high frame rate, so 144 plus FPS to match with my monitor at 1440p. Yeah. And putting just RTX on in Battlefield 5 lowered it to under 100 FPS, which a lot of people, that's fine. But I want to keep that high FPS, and RTX 3080 will definitely allow me to keep a much higher frame rate with the ray tracing stuff turned on. And now that a lot more games support it, I just think it'd be interesting to see what it has to offer as a technology.
Are you definitely putting your money down straight on the NVIDIA card, or are you going to wait and see what AMD pushes out as far as all of their stuff?
So the AMD announcements haven't happened yet for the video cards. They did have a brief preview of it.
Yeah, they did show like frame rate comparisons, and it did look like it was going to compete on the same level, but AMD also has that strategic advantage of going, like, they always show their stuff second, so they always have that strategic advantage of lowering their price value as comparatively to the Intels.
Yeah, it's the AMD Radeon RX 6000 series.
Yeah.
And they're kind of preliminary. Hold on.
Yeah, it looks like they were talking about the RX 6900 XT.
My camera just died.
Pause. Time out.
Back up and recording.
He's back, baby. Oh, Chris, I missed you. Where'd you go, buddy?
My camera overheated, dude. Who would have thought that was a thing? Anyway, so it's the AMD Radeon RX 6000 series, and their preliminary on 4K max for Borderlands is 61, and I think when we looked it up, it was like 67 or 65 on NVIDIA 3080.
Yeah. It was within like 5 frames.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, with the NVIDIA card press release and announcements, like, take those with a grain of salt. They're definitely cherry picking. It looked like it'd be about on par. What I'm going to assume, just based on history. So if I was basing on like all history, like let's say 2000 series versus the 5000 series of Radeon cards, I'd say it's going to be like their top card is going to be 40% slower than NVIDIA's top card. Yeah. But with the IPC, with the improvements Radeon has had in the graphics card side, Big Navi is supposed to be like a huge deal. If the 6900 XT, which I'm assuming is going to be their top card, is on par within 10% of the 3080, I think that's great, because most likely, and I'm not promising this because it's a little different on their CPU side, but on their graphics card side, the price should be like at least $200 cheaper.
Yeah.
So are you willing to take 10 to 15 frames FPS off 100 FPS plus frame rates for $200 less? I mean, if I'm on a budget, or I've been scrimping and saving for a graphics card, I'd definitely pick that up over the NVIDIA cards. And that's of course based on other things like driver stability upon release and stuff like that,
and availability.
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely a big issue right now.
Yeah.
A big thing that I noticed them pushing was that they could maintain above 60 FPS in 4K resolution at max settings. Is pretty much what they were trying to boast during the processing announcement.
Yeah. So I think that's good. And I'm a bit biased here because I have what I like, but I'd like to know more 1440p, 144 hertz what the benchmarks are for high frame rate gaming.
Well, it's half the resolution, so just double the frame rate, right?
Yeah,
That's how that works.
That'd be nice. Actually, it should. Sometimes it's more than double, but
sometimes it's less depending on the game.
Along with that sneak peek of the GPU, AMD announced their new 5000 series. What were we thinking about that? The 5900?
Well, at first I'm thinking, let's confuse the consumers because our last GPUs were 5000 series.
Wait, they were?
Yeah, so they had the 5500 and 5700 and 5600 XT graphics cards that came out this previous spring. No, I want to say it was last year, but anyway.
That's so confusing.
Processors I'm really excited for because since the birth, say, of Ryzen, it's kind of been AMD's comeback because for a while they were just crawling behind, Intel. And I have to say this is going to date me, but my last AMD chip was an AMD Opteron, which was more than 10 years ago I had. And so it's been a while since I've gone Team Red, but yeah, they showed the 5900 XT and the 5950 XT in benchmarks, and they're showing the 5900 XT outperforming the Intel i9 10900K, which, that's not a cheap processor by any means.
It's expensive as hell. Skylake, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's Coffee Lake.
That's what it is.
So the 10900K retail price, oh gosh, I can't. Everywhere is above retail right now. I want to say the retail is like $550 to $600.
Is it? It's really cheap?
$550. So $550, you're getting a 10-core, 20-thread chip with a max turbo frequency of 5.3 gigahertz, which Intel's been at or above that, magical 5 gigahertz number for a couple generations now. And then, mind you, that's not on all cores. So you might be lucky to get one of those 10 cores overclocking to 5.3. So back to AMD though, the great thing about this is they're showing it outperforming this chip. And I believe they said the 5900K is launching at $499, or actually it might be more expensive than the Intel, but they showed, I think, a list of about 10 games. Each game outperformed Intel handily, between 5 and up to 40% in some games. I think the only game it lost was Battlefield 5, but it also has more cores. It's a 12-core, 24-thread chip. Mm-hmm. So AMD, unfortunately, hasn't been able to break that magical 5 gigahertz number, which I also think just helps sell chips. I think the max turbo is still 4.8 on the...
People just look for the biggest number.
Yeah, the AMD. But so what the important thing here is the IPC improvements, which is the basically the calculations per clock is year over year. So you have, the Ryzen 2000 series, 3000 series, then now they skipped 4, gone to 5000. Their 4000 series is mobile only, so pretend those don't exist. Has been a 50% increase each time. So even though it's lower clock, you're actually calculating more things per clock than the Intel, despite it being a lower clock speed. So I'm really excited to see this. I'm going to try and pick up a 5900X on release. I want to compare it to my 10850K. Yeah. And the nice thing AMD did, which you could probably find it, is they actually posted, okay, this is the system we use to compare Intel and AMD. And they tried to make them almost exact, obviously, other than, one's an Intel motherboard and Intel chip versus AMD motherboard and chip. So it's good to see. I'm really excited to see that. I'm not keen on the price increase because, they're known to be the best bang for buck. But I'm sure, down the line of chips they'll have some really great stuff that hopefully outperform, with an equal price level to each
level. So you
level.
say price increase, what do you mean? They raised the price or something?
I think he's talking about the price to performance ratio. So AMD would always be like slightly below Intel, but you would also pay way less money for it.
Yeah, so
that's why I picked up. I have a Ryzen 7 in mine, a 2700, I believe.
Yeah, and
I absolutely love it. And I've always been an Intel person, but I've been in love with my Ryzen chips. So
if you took a comparison, you say like previous generation Intel 9900K was between $550 and $600, but the 3900X, the AMD, was I think like $450, so it was $100 or more less expensive. The new 5900X is being priced at $549, which is really good. It's equal to or $50 less than the Intel, which the 10900K has been like out of stock constantly since it's been released. I don't know why. So it's been going for over 600. The 5800X, which is an 8-core, 16 thread counts, 450, and the 5600X, which is a 6-core, 12 thread, is only 299. So you do have a good spread of prices there. I'm excited just to see what they can do, and I just want competition. Bring the prices down, bring innovation. You know, it's all about that. You know, Intel's been on that 14 nanometer process for like the 50th time now, and they've just been kind of stagnant without the competition.
I picked my Ryzen 7 up for, it's an 8-core processor, and I picked mine up for $120, which is like the only reason I even got it. Because I was like,
which one
the 2700X.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good deal. It's a strong processor.
It was like a super sale. I got like 40 or 50% off, and I was like, yep, time for an upgrade.
Yeah, man.
I had to go buy a whole new motherboard, and I think altogether I paid like $250.
I think one of the major benefits AMD has too is, I mean, obviously their multi-threaded performance has always just destroyed Intel since the first Ryzens were out. I mean, if you want to, you know, multitask or do editing or, you know, video editing, anything like that, it's just going to crush it.
Yeah, Ryzen's always been really good about that. So I do love the new Ryzen processor, and Intel will always have my heart. But when it comes to graphic cards, I've always gotten NVIDIA because I've always heard such horror stories about the Radeons, like the graphics cards, whether it be compatibility or just hardware faults overall. Like I've heard so many bad things about them.
So I think of the last couple of years, AMD has gotten a kind of a bad rap. You know, with the Radeon 7 that came out, it was, you know, they're really advertising it as a gamer card, but it wasn't. That card was focused on, you know, machine learning and rendering, and had abysmal gaming performance for the price.
Yeah.
And then you had, you know, the 5000 series graphics cards came out, which performed amazingly for the price. So like a 5700 XT performed as well as a 2070 Super at, you know, $200 to $300 less, depending on the model you got. And I'll admit, I picked one up, tried it out. You know, I was going to get a 2070 Super, save myself some money. Great performing card, but when the 5000 series launched, there was, at least for me, and I know many other people, abysmal driver problems. So you'd be 30 minutes into a game, it would just hard crash to desktop with a little pop-up that said your driver crashed.
Yep.
So I put up with that for about 2.5 weeks, and then I returned it, and I got an NVIDIA 27 Super and didn't look back. For me, I think that's a real sticking point that NVIDIA has to look at here, or sorry, that AMD has to look at here when launching this new card, is driver stabilities. Because even if it's as good as a 3080 for $100 less, if it's crashing every 30 minutes into any game you play,
not worth it. Yeah, it's just not worth the effort, man.
Everyone will just wait 6 months till the, you know, driver issues are finally worked out, and then they lose on those launch day sales. So
yeah.
Do you think
that's what I do?
Do you think AMD will run into similar stock issues? Do you think it's just inevitable? We've had like PS4, Xbox, NVIDIA now have all had stock issues. Do you think AMD will run into them?
So part one of the problem, I think, is, you know, when a limited edition shoe has gotten released for the past however many years, there's always been bots to buy those new limited shoes. And I think everyone else finally kind of figured you could use it for anything. Mm-hmm. And NVIDIA was the first big thing in the tech world that the bots hit hard, and then followed by, you know, the PS4 pre-orders and the Xbox pre-orders. And so NVIDIA is they're not using their usual chip manufacturer. Rumors were they were going with a 7 nanometer process by TSMC, but instead they actually went with a Samsung process for their silicon. That was an 8 nanometer process. And I think, you know, don't take my word for it, this is kind of speculation on my part. I think Samsung had some issues getting the yield needed from that specific silicon to bin them well enough for these cards. So, you know, when you have a wafer silicon, you're only getting a certain number of chips that meet a certain spec. So they're taking the top tier chips, putting them in the 3090s, next tier down 3080s. And then, you know, if they have some that don't meet it at all, well, that's garbage. And I think that was part of the problem. And they started production in August. And, you know, with the pandemic this year, I think that also caused issues. And I think they should have just postponed the launch, but they still want it to be out before AMD launched their stuff. So
for sure.
I think it was definitely a mistake. I mean, I feel like just based on reading Reddit threads, based on what everyone else in the media is saying, that there just wasn't the numbers produced that they said, even though they came out and said like, oh yeah, you know, we had unprecedented, bigger than Black Friday sales numbers come through.
Yeah.
Which, yes, but also with bots hitting it, that's really pumping up those numbers of people hitting the site. So who knows what percentage of that was just, you know, basically a DDoS attack from bots, their site. Now AMD's process, they've been doing their own process. They've been on a 7 nanometer they're doing it their own 7 nanometer for this chip. I think it's a little different. The only thing we don't have details on it are the yields for production. I would say it's going to be harder to get the the graphics cards than the CPUs.
Yeah, definitely.
I just don't think everyone has that desire to upgrade their CPU so often. So like, for instance, with the RTX 3080, you could still be running an Intel 7700K or 6700K, and it's not going to bottleneck that card.
Okay.
So you may notice a slight bottleneck at 1080p, but at 1080p, you're gaming at 300 plus FPS. Who cares if you're losing 1080p to the CPU?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's just not. You don't need to upgrade as often. So I think the CPU would be easier to come across than the cards. Cards, I'm sure, will be hard. Now, unless they have a ridiculous number available that NVIDIA just didn't have, I think it'll be a different story. Also, they don't have their own store.
They could be the second option.
Yeah, they're not selling, an AMD Founders Edition only available on the AMD store.
It's all the same everywhere.
Yeah, they're selling. They usually have like an own AMD Radeon branded card, but they sell it everywhere.
Okay.
And then you think about like, NVIDIA already gave up on their own shop. They're like, hey, Best Buy, here, take the reins. We couldn't handle the pressure. So, yeah.
So sad.
So with all this opportunity to upgrade your system, with the new processor coming out, new graphics cards coming out, do you think this is the time to actually go through and everybody give an overhaul to their systems? Or are you saying hold off and maybe check the market after a few months? What's your game plan?
I'd say if you're on an older 3 or 4 year old Intel system, even if you're running a nicer i7, if you want better multi-threaded performance, I'd say go ahead and upgrade and switch to AMD. Switch to Team Red. You're going to get better gaming performance and better multi-threaded performance. Now, if let's say you're on a 6700K, or even an older chip, like the 4970K is still a really popular chip. That is an old chip, but it still has fantastic gaming performance just because of the higher clock speeds. And I'd say if you're thinking about upgrading Intel, I'd say wait until see what next year's going to be, but it's still going to be the 14 nanometer process unless they change something crazy. You could upgrade if you wanted to. Is it worth it?
Even
I would say go AMD.
Even with that, if you do need if you are like a few series behind, or like your processor is 4 or 5 years old, you could even just wait, because this is going to drive the market down on all the older chips, the new chips coming out. So you could just wait for those sales to hit. You could pick up a good processor and even a good graphics card for really cheap. So like the 2080s are going to drop in price. The 1080 Ti's are going to drop in price. You know what I mean? Like the i9s are going to drop.
I regret not picking up an extra one right before RTX 3080 launched. You can get a 2080 Ti for like $500. Yeah. But now that you can't get a 3080, 1080 Ti or 2080 Ti's are selling for like $700 to $1,000. Like it was hilarious because I almost sold mine, and then I was like, nah, I'm gonna wait. And I'm glad I waited because they turned out to be impossible to get. Yeah. But yeah, I would say, like I said, if you're on a really old chip where you're gonna have to upgrade your motherboard regardless of what you had. So if you had a really old Ryzen, really old Intel with an older motherboard, and you know that your Ryzen chip, the BIOS isn't going to be upgraded to run with the new one, I would say upgrade to Ryzen. Yeah. And if you're here's the thing
also,
with Ryzen,
AMD always keeps theirs for 2 generations. Like their motherboards will work for 2 to 3 generations also, whereas Intel, it's every other generation.
So these are still working. The BIOS updates have already rolled out for most X570 boards to work with the new chips that aren't even out yet. So that's the thing. If you're running, a 2000 series chip, or 3000 series with an X 570, you only have to pay to upgrade your CPU. Now, if you're running a 3900X processor, would I say upgrade to the 5900? Yeah. I mean, this is the one time I'll say, that one single generational gap is worth it because you're actually finally beating Intel in gaming, which in my opinion, that's what I do. Most of the time, that's what counts to me. Those extra frames count. So yeah, I would upgrade in that case too. Now, graphics card wise, if you are on a 1080 or older, or an older Radeon like the 580, 590, then yeah, I would say it's time to upgrade to either NVIDIA or AMD. We'll have to see what AMD does, but I would say it's time to upgrade. If you're on 2080 Super, 2070 Super, is it time to upgrade to the 3000 series? I don't know yet. It depends on what the 3070 can do. Their rumors are 3070 will be on the heels of a 2080 Ti, which was a $1,200 card last year. So we'll see what it does. But I would say if you're already on a 2000 series card, unless you're on like a 2060 and you have saved up a little extra money and want to get that 3080 or 3070, do it. But yeah, if you're on a 10 series card or an older Radeon card, or even if you're on a Radeon 5 series, 5000 series, I'd say do it. It's time to do it. I feel like this has been the biggest technological leap in number of years as far as both CPU and GPU technology. CPU only for AMD, not Intel. Intel's like, yeah, let me add on 2 cores and that's it. Here you go. Make it hotter.
Are we gonna see the market shift as a whole this coming like holidays for like Black Friday, where maybe AMD is trying to dump their old stock of like
I think so.
their processors, so like they just have like drastic sales and then people could get in on those?
You usually see it like 6 months later, like everything just plummets in price.
Kind of. I don't think graphics cards are going to do anything. I think demand is just going to be too high and we may not see it happen. I'm hoping though that you will see some pretty good deals. I think still the best deals are going to be on that used market. Yeah, like you're going to get that guy that had a 3900X and upgraded to a 5900X, and he's just like, I don't care how much I get for this. You get a 3900X for $200.
How do you feel about used PC hardware? Because me personally, used PC hardware to me is like a used condom. I'm just not about that. That's just my personal preference.
That's a tough one. It kind of depends. I think a lot of it is a myth of, these people are using these graphics cards for mining, stuff like that. So yeah, graphics cards can still be used to mine certain cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin not being one of them. They've moved to an ASIC format. Other channels have shown this a lot too, but if you get a used card that's even been used for mining, as long as the temperatures are kept within a reasonable limit and well below the TDP limit of the card itself and the thermal throttle limit, it'll be fine. I mean, I wouldn't get something that's been mined on for 3 years straight.
Yep.
So if you just get like a processor that's like all like got crusty stuff all over it, you're just like, nah, bro. I'm not.
Why would you even buy that?
I always say,
just wait 6 months. All the prices will get drove down because it's what I do every time. I swoop in like a vulture. I pick up for like $200-$300 less than their launch title.
He's just sitting there in the corner, like rubbing his hands together. He's like, yeah.
I got that meme going, like, yeah, baby.
No, so I would say it's much harder now with what's going on in the world to be able to do this. But what I used to always tell people is try and see it working in person. I know, meeting up on Craigslist or, Facebook Marketplace or something, you don't necessarily want to go to someone's house. Yeah. But even if you can meet somewhere where they let you plug in the computer and just see it turn on and, boot to the post screen, just something, or like, a live stream, they could, FaceTime, show you. For processor, I'd say that good. For graphics card, I'd say, hey, can you run a benchmark for me? FaceTime me, stream it to me. Of course, best in person, not exactly practical now. And if you don't want to go that route, which you'll always find the best prices there, you can go eBay or another route that you can return something. eBay is pretty safe these days with being able to return something that isn't working.
Keep a lookout for my Instagram posts when we post my new 3090 in 6 months.
Yeah, right.
I'll pick that puppy up for $400.
So, parting thoughts for everybody. If you got the money, upgrade, because it's probably the best generation to do it no matter what. If you don't have the money to buy the new stuff,
Yeah.
Hang on there.
DM
Hang
me.
in there.
DM.
Hang in there.
Dive in my
Because
DMs.
prices will eventually go down and you'll be able to get some really nice stuff.
Truth.
Yeah, so I'd say definitely if you're on a budget, wait till spring, maybe early summer next year, and dive in on, all the, or even after wintertime, dive in on all those people that got those new computer parts for Christmas and are dishing their old stuff for, a little bit of cash.
Yep.
If you're on a budget. If you're not on a budget, or, you have just an ample budget.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a good time to dive in. It's the first time in quite a few generations where I've been like, wow, I actually feel like upgrading has been worth it. And I'm someone that's going to upgrade, no matter what. I just want to build a new personal rig every year. And when we start testing stuff for the channel, we have that available to us to try. But yeah, I'd say it's for the first time in a long time, it's been like an impressive generational leap in technology. Graphics cards, I'd say maybe not as huge of a leap as I would have liked to see. I tend to be a little over optimistic when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I still think it's really nice, especially considering the last leap was like kind of just went, was a letdown as the 2000 series rolled in. Yeah. So it was like, hey, here's some new technology, but you're not really getting much more performance. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely a good time. I'm hopeful for it. I'm interested really to see what comes next year as well. Hopefully Intel will finally pull that stick out from where and get on some more revolutionary stuff than they have in the past few generations.
If I go all in this generation and next generation's better, I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to lick your eyeball. Hey, thanks for joining us, Beers and Bacon. It's been really nice having you on the CHRILLCAST.
Thanks for having me.
As always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And we will see you
The next CHRILLCAST.